12:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the 9th of March 2018 by Daniel Feinberg. Sometimes reviews need to be complicated, factoring in writing and performance and direction and varied viewer preferences for a recommendation that can still be uncertain. Sometimes reviews can be really simple, like this: if you enjoyed the quippy, procedural lightness of ABC's long-running drama Castle, but Nathan Fillion's seasoned, snarky charisma wasn't a factor in your pleasure and, in fact, you thought, "I'd love this show a lot more if the leading men were blander and the leads had no ongoing sexual chemistry," you just may be the target audience for ABC's new drama Deception. If you happen to love magic, even when it doesn't always seem conveniently shoehorned into a weekly investigation, boy, allow me to introduce your new favorite show. That's the review. Everything else is just gravy. Jack Cutmore Scott plays Cameron Black, a popular Las Vegas illusionist who becomes unemployable after a scandal that takes place in the first 5 minutes of the pilot, but a scandal I won't spoil it until later in the review. That leaves Cameron and his team of diverse assistants, Justin Chance Jordan, Lenora Cricklows Dina and Vinnie Jones Gunter, unemployed. That changes when Cameron is watching TV coverage of an aviation explosion thwarting an FBI investigation and he announces, "Whoever did this was an illusionist." Before you can say, abracadabra, Cameron has made his way into the crime scene and he announces, "Your plane did not explode. It disappeared." The FBI agents on the scene are Maury Nolasco's Agent Alvarez, who just so happens to be a huge fan of Cameron's work, and Ilfenesh Hedera's Agent Daniels, who claims she hates magic, but may just be protesting too much. Just as Castle was able to quickly dispense with the myriad liabilities that accompany bringing any completely untrained civilian contractor into a law enforcement situation, it doesn't take long for Team Deception to be regularly on call for Daniels and Alvarez, and if you'd think that there might be a finite number of investigations on which one might find magic useful, you'd be hilariously incorrect. Creator Chris Fedek, mining somewhat similar nerdy yet fun tonal terrain to his work on Chuck, has a good time explaining how perspective and misdirection and other principles associated with magic tricks and magic staging are part of many well-planned crimes as well. Fedek and the show's writers blur the line between magicians and con artists, so there are lots of amusingly named gambits for Team Deception to propose and then explain to the normals, which is probably good for 5 minutes of filler per episode. There's an ongoing serialized story involving Cameron's career jeopardizing scandal and guest star Stephanie Corneliuson, who appears in maybe 90 seconds total in the first 3 episodes sent to critics, but the procedural rhythms of Deception set in almost immediately. Just as Richard Castle would show up at crime scenes unprompted, spew some conventions of the mystery novel he was writing, smile when people recognized him, and occasionally put everybody's life in jeopardy by stumbling his way to a solution. Cameron Black can't resist making a big arrival, throws out a few magical conventions that may be at play, smiles when people recognize him, and always seems on the brink of getting himself killed. As was the case with Stana Katic Beckett, Agent Daniels' resistance to Cameron's charms is short-lived. I don't think Deception is pointing to an inevitable romance quite as aggressively as Castle was from the outset, but that may be a factor of Cutmore Scott and Hedera having no real spark. The 3 procedural cases in the episodes I've seen are all decent and sometimes even clever, it's just that a formula sets in so quickly that a lot of dramatic tension is sapped. If every episode is going to have Cameron and his team doing a misdirected illusion to fool the bad guys and the audience is in on that inevitability, we never get to experience the pleasure of magic, which is the whole being fooled by it thing. So much of the show hinges on viewers finding Cameron as fascinating as the people in the Deception universe find him, but there's a reason why most of the more famous magicians who break through beyond mid-size Vegas venues aren't just preppy, Abercrombie models. Even David Copperfield, probably on the more conventionally handsome side by magician standards, has an intensity that verges on hypnotic. In a job in which you've got to have a gimmick, Cameron Black's gimmick appears to just be smug frat boy, and forgive my skepticism that he could truly achieve this level of pun intended prestige. Cutmore Scott has a young Cary Elwes vibe, reduced somewhat by the pointless decision to have him playing American. As was also the case on his Fox comedy Cooper Barrett's Guide to Surviving Life, he's playing a character here who needs to be unimaginably fascinating to get away with how otherwise annoying he'd be. He does, however, do some convincing close magic that the show's directors, starting with David Nutter, take pride in showing without visible edits, ignoring that due to TV magic, we probably wouldn't know if there was trickery involved anyway. Getting briefly into the spoiler from the first 5 minutes of the pilot, Cameron has a twin brother, who was part of his act and also part of his career-halting scandal and now finds himself unjustly imprisoned. Cut more. Scott is not interesting enough an actor to play variations on himself, and every time Cameron and brother Jonathan shared the screen together, I could only reflect on how odd it is that even in jail, Jonathan uses the same electric razor stubble setting as his brother. This is not an illusion that is well executed. Adara, Nolasco and Layla Robbins, as the obligatory stern boss whose skepticism about Cameron lasts a little bit longer.